So introduction to new toolchain on SharePoint Framework 122, where SharePoint Framework, as we're recording this video, the SharePoint Framework 122 is in release candidate status. Release candidate already means that it's super close on GA. We're not intended to actually have changes on it. If we will have a significant changes, there's going to be another release candidate 2 before the general availability, but we're not aware of any changes what should be there. Before we go to the actual changes within the 122, I wanted to quickly recap the context and to get you on the right level and right situation on this one. So SharePoint Framework is the easiest way to build pro code experiences in Microsoft 365. It is widely used by customers and partners all around the world to create extensibility within SharePoint or in Microsoft Teams or in Microsoft Viva. And you can, for example, use it to integrate to AI scenarios as well relatively easily. And we plan to evolve that in the future in making it even easier to do all of the different AI capabilities with SharePoint Framework. Now, SharePoint Framework has existed for quite a long time, and it has been GA'd for quite a long time. The growth is just out of this world. We continue seeing the growth all the time, and it keeps on growing. The reason why I showed the slide is more on anybody who's like, hey, wait a minute, so is SharePoint Framework still a thing? Are people using it? And the answer is yes, they keep on using it more and more and more, which is awesome to see based on our worldwide statistics. We do have tens of millions monthly active users using custom SharePoint Framework components across the Microsoft 365, which is awesome to see. Now, we have also started publishing a public roadmap for SharePoint Framework, and right now we've been publishing openly sharing 122, 123, and 124 as the upcoming versions. And 123 was initially planned to actually go live initially in late of October, then it was delayed to November. Now it's actually gonna plan to happen in December 2nd. That is a week from now on Tuesday, or maybe Wednesday next week on 3rd of December. And the main idea of 122 is really focusing on not bringing a new capabilities. It's basically resetting the baseline and platform and the tool chain. So first of all, cleaning all of the NPM audit issues, vulnerabilities, which are coming from NPM audit, and then transitioning from Gulp to an open back-based tool chain orchestrated by Heft. And as part of all of this work, we're also updating the default TypeScript version to 5.8, but there's no actual new versions or features within 122, which is important to understand. New baseline setting. And then with 123, we're looking into introducing new capabilities. Among other things, we're looking into open sourcing all of the SharePoint Framework solution templates directly to the GitHub, introducing new SPFx CLI, replacing the existing Yeoman generator, which is kind of a black box. You do not, as an external person, you have no idea what that actually does, but SPFx CLI is open source. So you're able to actually see what happens behind the scenes. You're able to suggest changes using pull requests directly within the GitHub as well. Then we're looking into introducing command set improvements, new edit and edit panel overrides to the list and libraries. So right now you can actually do custom forms, but that's a transition within the page load, so you cannot override the panels, and that's intended to be in 123. And then new debugging toolbar, eventually that's intended to actually replace the workbench, which might sound catastrophic thing. No, don't do that. No. But the idea here is that you can actually really easily do debugging directly within the live pages or within the live dashboard using the debugging toolbar and associated capabilities. And then we are actually looking into collecting more feedback on developer satisfaction directly using the debugging toolbar. 124, we don't know that much detail or full list of features there yet, but navigation customizer override is intended to happen there. But that's a quick intro on where we are with SharePoint Framework as we're recording this in late November. And let's actually then deep dive on SharePoint Framework 122 and what are those tool chain changes on that side. And I'm pleased to announce Andrew Connell from Voitanos is actually covering this one too. We've been partnering with AC on many of the documentation and guidance and tutorials on SharePoint Framework for a long time. So AC, feel free to take it away and share your screen.
Cool. All right. So you can, if you want to just share my camera or spotlight my camera, I've got it set up until I have to share my screen. Does that work?
I'm not sure that's going to work for the recording that well in Teams. That's the challenge.
Oh, well, then let me share my screen. One sec.
I'm not sure what's going to get out of that. So just just to avoid any conflicts there. So it's easier this way.
Can you see my screen now?
Yep, I can see the screen. Audio is good.
All right.
Take it away.
Awesome. Okay, so thank you very much, Vesa. Let me just kind of dive in. I'm going to show you a little bit here of, I want to start with how this toolchain works so you can have a better understanding of just kind of like what, how you can kind of pick it apart when you want to figure out like, how is this working? How am I getting here? How do I start navigating it? Et cetera. I'm sure I'm going to get a bunch of questions about this, so just drop them in the chat. I'll do my best to answer them as we go along. So first things first. So what's the big impact here? Well, from the get-go, gulp is out, heft is in. So what is the impact? So what you're looking at here, this is a brand new SPFx version 1.22 release candidate 0 project that I've created here. And what you'll notice here is there's no gulp file.js. That's one of the biggest things that you're going to see that's a difference that is now just gone. Fundamentally, though, when you think about it, gulp and heft, they serve the exact same purpose. They're just task runners. They just run tasks. They do it in a very different way. But what Microsoft has done is they've decided to switch to heft. Okay, so how does heft work? Well, if you come into a brand new project that you've already created, and I'm going to make sure that I'm on the right SPFx next. I'm going to make sure I'm on the right version of Node that's got this installed. And if I just do heft-h, and that should give me a list of all of the, let me shrink that up a little bit. That's going to give me a list of all of the different things that I can do from heft. Now, what it's showing me here is the same kind of thing as if I did gulp space dash tasks. It's giving me the same thing. So you see a little bit of information about how to use heft. And what it's doing then is it's going to show me all of these different commands that are available to us. Some of the commands like run are native heft things, and all these other ones like packaging solution, dev deploy, trust dev cert, untrust dev cert. You'll notice all those things are going to be very familiar to you. You're also going to notice some of them have a watch command on the end of it. So we've got like build and build watch. You've got test and test watch. This dash watch thing, this is an extra command that's available to us where it can watch the files that are being edited. So if it needs to restart it, we've done something like that as well. So that's just how you can get a list of all the different commands that are available to you. And you can always learn more about a command. If I just say, let's go back here. If I say like heft, let's say start-h, what options do I have? And it's going to show me all the different arguments that I can pass into this. All right. So that's one. Now, there's a couple things here that are also going to be a little bit different you're going to find from what we've done in the past. So when in the past, we used a task called gulp build to build our project. Other times you would then, after building it, you then want to create your bundle. So you'd say gulp build and then gulp bundle to create the bundle. In this case, in the new heft toolchain, the build phase does both of those things. So there's no reason really to have two separate stages for this. Instead, it's just now when you run build, it does a build and a bundle. You'll find some other things too, like for example, if I do the package solution -h, you'll see here there is no -- ship like we used to have before. Now it is -- production. So that's one of the other big changes. I'm going to, let me just drop this link here in the chat. I've got a link that I just posted in the chat. And what that's going to do is it's going to take you to this page here where you see the tool chain, an overview of the tool chain. That's inside the SharePoint Framework docs. And if you scroll down, you'll find this section, Build Toolchain and Dependencies. There's an overview of the whole of everything. You can see our old toolchain and then the heft toolchain. It takes you straight to this page. All of these other pages in here are going to give you a lot more detail on how it works, how to use it, customizations, etc. In fact, you'll also find in here there is, I think it's in this one, it might be in the next page, where we actually have a table here understanding how this works and a comparison of the old tasks to the new tasks that we have in heft. Okay, well, that's all fine and good, but how does this thing work? How do we use this? Well, under the covers, the way heft works is that when you run heft inside of a project that is configured for heft, which the SharePoint Framework project is, what you're going to find is inside the package solution or the package.json, you're going to find that heft is already installed locally, just like we did with gulp. I will tell you that this is not required, but I will tell you that I think it is advantageous to you if you go install heft globally as well. That's just as easy as just popping up the command prompt and saying npm npm install at rushstack/heft-g for installing it globally. I would do that because it's going to make your life a lot easier. You will see some spots where Microsoft tries to make it easier with these different scripts that you see here, where they've got like predefined scripts. You can use those if you like. I'm just going to warn you that this can kind of create some confusion, because if you try to add an argument to this, it gets pretty to one of these, it gets pretty confusing. Like if I tried to run npm script package solution, which is going to run package solution, and then I do the space -- production on the end of it, it's not going to work. So yeah, I like to instead just go through and use the main command. Okay, so what Heft does when it first goes through and it runs this, it gives us the it's going to give us a list of all of our commands. When I then, the way it finds those commands is it's usually going to go look inside of the config folder for a file called heft.json. Now these different commands, now you don't see it yet, and I'll explain why. But when you look at this, yeah, so I see Peter posted you can do that to make it work, but frankly, I think that's kind of there's really no reason to do that. And actually that won't work. You can't do npx run package solution. You'd have to, well, I guess you could do that, but it's just easier just to install Heft globally, to be honest with you. So the other thing that you can do with this is you can, so I said that you could have like a heft.json file, and that's going to list out what you saw here is all those different commands that I had in my command prompt a second ago. Let's go back to that. Heft H. So all these different commands that you saw here, like trust dev cert and build, or so we got build and test, all those that are here. The way it finds out what those are, each one of those different commands, those are actually called a phase, and all of those phases contain tasks, and each one of those tasks can be configured. All right. So we can have different settings for those things. Now, what Microsoft has done, or one of the things that Heft has the ability to support, and the SharePoint team has taken advantage of this, is that they have created a pre-configured build toolchain of all of these phases and their configurations already defined. That is called a rig inside of Heft. We can then take that rig and we can package it up into an npm package that we can then use in our different projects. So when you look over here in your dev dependencies, you'll see the SPFx web build rig. What that is doing is that is installing an npm package that contains our rig configuration. So if Heft doesn't find a heft.json file in the config, it then looks for this rig. This rig file, this rig.json file, is saying go look for a package called @Microsoft SPFx web build rig. Okay, so what I'm going to do is come over here to config. I'm going to go into my node modules. I'm then going to scroll down to Microsoft with this nice little lag that just started showing up for perfect timing. And if I look at SPFx SPFx web build rig, and I open up profiles, what you'll see is a default profile. So a rig package, which is what we're in right now, can contain multiple profiles. In this case here, we just have one. So I didn't have to say rig what the rig profile name is. If I open up the config, I will find my heft.json. And what is inside this? But it will have a phases by name, and now you see all the phases defined. So what happens when I do a build? Well, a build is going to have a bunch of tasks, like it's going to do the Sass compiler, the TypeScript compiler, it's going to do linting, copying JavaScript, configuring Webpack, blah, 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 blah. All this other stuff is going to do, and ultimately use Webpack. So that's how you can see like how these tasks are being defined. Now, what's kind of cool with this is that when you back up, if I look at one of these, like if I look at the TypeScript one, or if I look at the Sass one, what you'll notice here is that in the plugin, it's defined. So this is a plugin right here where we see it. This is a phase name. This phase is using a plugin. That plugin is inside of this package, another npm package. Okay. That plugin, and all of this is explained inside the docs. So if the docs I linked to earlier, I'm just trying to give you a little bit of an overview on how to pick through this. All right. And when you look at a project, it's all pretty much self-describing. This Sass plugin, what it's going to do to configure this, we can make changes to it in our own project. So if I come over here inside of my config folder in my project, you're going to find there's already a file called sass.json. If I look at this sass.json file, you can see that what it's doing is it's extending an existing SAS.json configuration, and it's doing it straight from the web build rig default profile we were just looking at a second ago. What's nice about this is if I want to come over here to the SAS.json file, I can then come back into this and I can say, make a change to it. And I can say, well, let's go through and let's exclude certain files or only include certain files, right? And I can define all the files that I want to end up using inside of this configuration. What that will do when I extend the configuration, it will take the existing configuration and any changes that I apply to it will overwrite the ones that are already there, all right? So that allows me to have a much more configurable tool chain. Now, that's the gist of how a lot of this works. I will tell you that a couple things, and I see a couple questions here that I'm happy to answer in just a second if we have time. But a couple things that I want to touch on with this is that, what was I going to say? Like I said before, I would strongly recommend that you install Heft globally. That's one thing. Another thing too is that you may look at and say, well, did we have with Gulp, we had this Gulp CLI that we had to install globally, which was different from Gulp. That concept is not required for Heft. That was a Gulp specific thing for a versioning challenge that they ran into many years ago. The same Heft package that we installed, that is installed in our project by default, is what we can install globally. All right. Now, the last thing that I'll say on this is I see a couple of questions here about, can we create new profiles? How do we customize some stuff? Absolutely. That's what the docs they go into. You can look at this page in the docs where how do you customize the tool chain with plugins? I can tell you that every single thing that we've looked at, and I've worked with Microsoft a bunch over the last few months, every scenario that we've run into that we had to do customizations between all this stuff in the past, we used to be able to, we can do all those same things with Heft. In fact, I think a lot of them are a lot easier and they're a lot more extensible than what we had before. So I know some of you are saying, I see some stuff in the chat where I can't tell if people are talking about this or what Paulo was saying before about hoping that there's that Copilot understands all this. It's the same thing we did with Heft, with Gulp, guys. It is you run a task, all right? If you don't want to do any customizations with your tool chain, that's perfectly fine. You just run tasks. If you want to go through and do customizations, I will tell you it is easier and it is much more portable and reusable with Heft than it was with Gulp. Wish we had more time to dive into that. And if we did, I'm happy to keep going, but I don't want to, I'm going to turn this back over to Vesa and let Vesa say whatever he wants to say.
I think it's let's not scare people more. No, yeah. Just to be clear there, like AC was saying, we'll set up another time when we're going through a bit more detailed on the extensibility model. I think it's more clear to have it as a separate video in the end as well. So just to avoid any confusion over there. But thank you, AC, on that one. Let me actually take the presentation, and that also leaves us a bit of time to actually close up the call as well. So thank you, AC, for showing that one. And again, like AZ was saying, in simplicity, don't get now, AZ was deep diving on how things are actually working and how it actually mapping everything works. If you are just getting started on SPFx, there is no other differences than previously using Gulp Serve, and now you're using Heft to start, and that's it. It's just the mapping between the different commands without you using as part of this tool chain transition. Now, if you're an advanced person on SPFx and these scenarios, Heft actually provides you a lot of different opportunities and capabilities, and it's more future-proven. We do use Heft internally in Microsoft. Everything what is built with SharePoint, as an example, is built using Heft tool chain. That's where some of this is coming from as well. So that's a quick recap on that one. So again, no other changes necessarily needed when you're transitioning from Gulp to Heft. Just what was the command and what is the new command, and everything is documented as well. So thank you for that one. Now, quick recap again on SharePoint Framework. If you go back on the intros and just on getting started on things, we have docs videos, monthly roadmap updates. We did actually just release the latest update on November. Monthly roadmap update went live 15 minutes before this call, and we want to do that in the last week of every single month. We started that in September 2025 and continue doing that in the future, just to avoid any confusion. What are the planned new versions and what's actually in the pipeline? And also, we really want to make sure that if you run into any issues related on SPFx, we do have our issue list. There's a separate discussion list as well. We were looking into having a discussion with anybody who wants to provide input for our planning. We also have an SPFx toolkit for VS Code extension, which is really, really cool. It is not, however, provided by Microsoft. We are closely involved, but it's primarily led by the community on the development side. Great open source project, super powerful, have GitHub agentic integrations and all of that in it, and really simplifies SPFx development. And of course, that project is adapting now Heft, so you don't need to necessarily even understand those commands, because you actually have buttons in the VS Code extension to just click a button to compile and build and all of that. And behind the scenes, it's using then Gulp or Heft as needed. So it is a really, really smart thing. Videos, issues, and a lot of samples available for you to get started. Feedback always welcome. So please continue providing us feedback through multiple different channels on the SharePoint framework. That's it for this one.